This is TMI, the Minority Input. We've got our guest Josh here.
What's up? What's up?
Yeah, we're talking about masculinity.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got AJ, Aaron here. Hi, Ming.
Yeah. All right, you ready?
Let's get it.
Let's get into it.
All right. First question, how do you define it? What do you think? I'll let the guest go first, Josh.
Putting me on the spot. Okay.
Go ahead. Psychology major real quick.
Right.
Right. It's going to put my whole life story on the podcast. So. Masculinity for me has always been kind of a spectrum, in my opinion, like spectrum from masculinity to femininity. Like, I know personally I'm not like my actions and my interests are not completely and totally masculine as society defines it, like, you know, as like kind of that stereotypical like man's man who goes and works out every day and like drinks beer and like all that kind of stuff, loves football, sports, cars, explosions, that kind of stuff.
Typical bro.
Am I allowed to swear?
Keep it to a minimum of it, expect yourself.
Okay,
yeah.
Nothing too explicit.
Right. I was supposed to make sure I checked myself before I kept going.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
But yeah, I think it's mostly nowadays it's on a spectrum to where like if I guess people can define themselves as more masculine or as more feminine, but masculinity in itself, I guess, is still kind of a concept that we haven't fully defined or fleshed out yet as far as for this new society, because like the old definition of masculinity really doesn't work for what we have now, I guess. In a sense.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely changed just throughout the years. Like you said, like our generation, I feel like is a lot more like forward than like any other, you know, but that's with every generation, right? Like everyone kind of pushes the limit a little bit more. And I feel like with us, when it comes to a lot of like, just like the household is totally different, you know, back in the day where like the man, you know, you think of like the provider like going out, but now we actually have like fathers who like stay at home and like take care of the kids,
right?
And, you know,
my pops will stay at home.
Moving away from that more patriarchal, just value and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely switched up, which I definitely feel like is a lot better because it does do something. I feel like mentally, you know, because a lot of people feel like they have to live up or be a certain person. Right. But the thing about our generation, we're at that point where we're like, I feel like stopping trying to be like a certain type of person or fit into like a certain type of group. As we all know, like we're creating a lot of other different groups, you know, like people are identifying as other types of people, other things than like the norm.
I feel like it's kind of half and half though, in a sense, because I know like we know this because we go to a mostly liberal arts school, and like a lot of the people who we're around have the same kind of ideas, but then you have to think about the other people who that were like raised by like really, really strict parents to hold on to these ideas, and so because of that they're like stuck in their ways and only believe like the black and white, not the gray in between. You know what I mean?
And their parents' ideals kind of switch onto them.
Right, exactly. So like it's definitely fading. It's definitely phasing out as like our ideas of masculinity. I'm saying our as like a complete group. Our ideas of masculinity is becoming more in the forefront, and those are taking the back seat. Whereas like if this was even 50 years ago, that would be completely and totally flopped. You know what I mean? So we're definitely on the right path, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely. I think it's really interesting because, like, personally for me, like, I would define masculinity as someone. Like, a lot of people look at physical stuff sometimes, or they'll talk about the stereotypical things for this masculinity. Oh, you're taking care of this, da da da. But I really think masculinity is taking accountability for things. You know, being responsible, doing what you got to do, and being respectful. Honestly, like if I had to put it into that, it's not, you know, masculinity is in relationship to someone else or anything like that. It's no, who are you as a person? Who are your characteristics? Like, what are your characteristics?
See, I feel like with that, to challenge that, I feel like that's, in my mind, that's more being a man versus masculinity. I feel like masculinity is very, in my mind, defined. You know, like, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, taking care of your stuff, doing what you need to do, all of that type of stuff. I look at that as being like a man, not as being like masculinity. Masculinity I look at is just like a trait, which is something not every man needs to have, you know, because there are more feminine men, which isn't a negative thing. They can still be a strong man and take care of their family and be respectful and all this type of stuff, but they're just feminine, you know. So I feel like in my mind, that's more of like a man versus masculinity.
And
So-
take that even a step further, I feel like that's more of just being an adult, because I know
True.
for a fact
That's
it's so
true.
like you can look just around here in general. It's a lot of women who on their grind, like they not stopping until they hit like what they
I mean, that's what I was
get to,
thinking
you
when I
know
was saying
I mean?
that too. That's like, that's not masculinity, because women do that very well.
Right.
But
Exactly.
but at the same time, so if you see a dude who's like more skinny or shorter or whatever, you automatically say he's not masculine.
In my mind, I would think he doesn't have masculine traits. You know, the thing is, I feel like so many people think of masculinity as like a positive thing, where it's not a positive thing. To me, I look at it as like a skin color. You know what I'm saying? Like someone is darker, someone is lighter. It's not something that
Something,
to be,
an adjective, some.
yeah,
Right.
it's not something to be like, oh yeah, I'm like, if I look at you, I'm gonna say, yeah, you're lighter skinned than me. You know what I'm saying? I might say like, oh, I look at, I think you're a little bit lighter, you know.
Nah, you
Maybe
already
like
know I'm
half a
dark
shade.
skinned.
Nah, I'm the only
You know
dark
what I'm
skinned
saying?
one here.
I look at Josh, he's taller than me, you know what I'm saying? And yes, if I look at him, I would say he has a more masculine, like
Demeanor,
physical, like attributes,
appearance,
than me. But that's just an observation. It's not
Like,
like
it
a
doesn't make
good or
him
bad
less
thing.
of a man. Doesn't make like
Yeah.
that kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's how I look at it, honestly.
Oh, that just kind of brought something to mind. So I'm gonna challenge. Okay, so
Okay.
Yeah.
interesting. Do you guys feel like the definition or just masculinity alone, do you think that confuses men or kind of adds fuel to the fire? Like, okay, I'm trying to put this into words. So like,
Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
if you're saying, wow, this dude is masculine or this dude is not, and you just keep using masculinity, do you think that is perpetuating something negative, using that over and over again? Because you know, in men, especially black men, like mental health is a huge thing that's always overlooked, and we overlook it a lot and things like that. But, and you know, like self-image, all that stuff.
Right.
Do you guys think that the continual use of masculinity is something that adds fuel to that fire? Or do you think that it's just the way that certain people perceive it? Like, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally get what you're saying. Yeah, I would definitely say for me, I feel like it's more on the person. Like, so me, it's more on me to think like, okay, I know what I look like, I know who I am, and for me not to be obsessed with being like masculine versus using the word. It's like you can't get rid of it. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's a descriptive word. Like, yes, it's going to be said, but I can't look at someone and be like, all right, he looks more masculine than me, so he's more like I'm inferior or something like that. You know? So I feel like it's more, the problem that people have is usually in their head versus others. And so we judge
Yeah, that's true,
ourselves
yeah.
a lot more than other people do. Like,
Right.
there's no one I'm walking around looking like, oh yeah, he's more masculine than, you know, like he's masculine or he's not or whatnot. Like, that's not my first like thing I think about, unless it's someone who's like obviously
Like
overtly
over, yeah,
feminine.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's then it's very obvious. But like just most men, I'm not looking at them and judging how masculine they are.
Yeah.
But in their mind, they might. And even in my mind,
That's
I
true, yeah.
used to think about that. Where now I kind of
It depends on the dude, in my opinion.
I know
Like,
that.
I'm 100% going to say The Rock is more of a masculine man than I will ever be in my life. Because that man is
For sure.
massive.
Mhm.
Like,
Nah.
but
But does that hurt you? Does that upset you?
no, it doesn't upset me. Like, if anything, I don't know. I just like personally, it gives me kind of a goal. Like, just like it is not because like, I want to be as masculine as he is. I'm looking at him just as like at his physical attributes. And, like those might be considered to be masculine. But that's also something that I want for myself, not because it's what everybody else thinks is nice. Like he's in really good physical shape.
Yeah.
And I just wish I was in that kind of shape as well. Like probably not as big as he is, but you know, like able to be able to go work out every day and not get like super winded and stuff like that. Like if I had that kind of drive, that kind of integrity and shit, like and stuff like that.
No, that's good. But like even like if we weren't talking about masculinity right now, if you were thinking about The Rock, would that be the word you would use, or would just be like, oh no, that's a
The first word that comes to my head is massive, not masculine.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, because I feel like that's not very common to like just think about someone's masculinity. Like,
Right.
it's more of honestly something you think about. Like, have you ever thought about yours? Or
Yeah, I thought about mine. I've definitely contemplated my masculinity, but like I don't really like you were saying. I don't really think about it when I like pass people on the street or something like that. It's not like, oh, that guy is like dressing really feminine, or that guy looks like he has like masculine features or something like that. I'm not judging them based off of that. I'm trying not to judge them at all, honestly, because like that's the ultimate goal, is to not be judgmental as you're like just kind of walking down
To a
the street.
certain extent, yeah.
Yeah, toward a certain extent, you know. But I don't know, off the thought.
I mean, even though like there's a lot of people who do walk around like that, you know, very subconscious, self-conscious. Yeah.
I feel like everyone has certain things they're self-conscious about, you know what I'm saying? Masculinity might be one, but I feel like a lot of times it comes from a lot of like darker demons they have versus than just that, you know what I'm saying? So like it's something with them that's causing them to have that like conflict.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I feel like now that I think about it, like I feel like the more darker, not even darker, but just less happy demeanor comes across to a lot of people as more masculine.
For sure.
As well.
Yeah, because you would think masculinity is like somebody who doesn't
You're
show
just more
emotion.
serious. Right. You know.
Like that's I'm not sure. I'm not sure how like you guys were raised, but like that's kind of how I was raised when I was growing up. It was like I was a very emotional kid. Like if something was wrong with me, like people would know it, but I would always be told to like stop crying. Don't do that. Men don't show emotion. Big boys don't cry. Like, big boys don't cry. That kind of stuff like that. And so like I grew up with that kind of notion, and so that for me, like, so guys, my masculinity was like me not showing emotion, and then like even when I started playing football, it was like don't show the other person across the line from you that like you might be scared or like anything like that to let them get into your head, because if they get into your head, they win. So it was always kind of like a power dynamic, whether it was like me versus another person or me versus society. It was always like don't let them know how you feel.
Yeah. And which adds to a lot of pent up emotions and stuff, which then adds to walking around, you know, not ever sharing things and just kind of keeping it closed down. I think that adds to a lot of
That's
damage.
A lot of men nowadays are like really closed off with like their emotions, and they don't want to talk about that unless they're like really close to somebody. Or like one thing I noticed, like they won't talk about that with their guy friends, but they'll talk about it with their female friends. And like that's something that I really wish like wouldn't happen, because like personally, a lot of my guy friends, like we have those type of conversations all the time where it's like I know if I had something on my mind right now, I can call one of my best friends and he would be like right there.
Yeah.
And I wish a lot more just men in society were like that, because like it would help them deal with their emotions a lot better.
Definitely.
And while dealing with somebody else's, so it's like able to like that give and receive kind of like help and stuff like that.
Yeah, emotional intelligence is so important.
It definitely is. I feel like you have to think about who you surround yourself with too, because like a lot of people get into these groups of men who don't want to be like that. Like I remember I first met Josh. I met Josh like 4 years ago or something. First, like when I first met him, I was like, okay, yeah, he seemed like a super like more on the rougher side, you know, like more masculine and stuff like that. You were like happy-go-lucky for sure, but you definitely had that like machismo type of thing about you, like coming from playing football and you know what I'm saying, and just like how we spoke to each other then versus a year, 2, 3, you know, from that point, as you become closer to a person, especially when you live with the person, because we've lived together for multiple years, you go through so much in life and you rely on those people around you, you know, and so when you have men who can really relate to you, you know, because like, yes, a lot of men feel like they can talk to females about stuff, and they can, but it's a different like thing when it's another man you're talking to, you know, because you two kind of get that like connection. It's like it's a different type of vulnerability. I feel like, and being okay with that is huge, you know what I'm saying, and it takes time to get to that point to be vulnerable with like a man, you know,
especially when like if you're saying something and you get feedback from another man about like you, like towards you, it's almost more, you feel it more, because it's like, oh, you have more of a right to say something because you're in my same shoes as a male. So it's like what you're saying has more validation. Like I think that's subconsciously what a lot of people think. It's like, oh, you're a man, so I want to make sure you affirm what I'm saying, or you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand that. And like my biggest, like one thing that I always thought, like it's kind of a power thing, where like you don't want to show yourself as being weak in front of another man because that would hurt your masculinity and make you seem like less of a man, quote unquote. But in order for you to get over that, you have to like kind of break down that like whole like idea of masculinity that you might have in your head and go on to be like, okay, something's wrong with me. I need to go talk to somebody, make it happen. Like, just do what you got to do instead of like thinking about worrying about what other people would think about what you're doing.
One second, guys. Hey, what's going on, guys? We're back. We just had to relocate because, you know.
A little difficulty, but don't worry.
A little difficulty. It's all good.
Work, though.
We'll make it work. Found a good room.
Yeah,
But,
for sure.
yeah, no, I wanted to say something about authenticity. I think that leads a lot to it. I think you're not fazed by anyone's perceptions of masculinity or anything when you are authentic to yourself and you know who, like going back to identity, when you just know who you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a really big part of it. Because like if you're really self-conscious about who you are, you start comparing yourself to like other people, and then you, like it's kind of just starts to like beat your cycle of like messing yourself up, and then you just kind of end up going into like deeper into yourself. Like I know my thing is a lot of people that I went to high school with, they were obsessed with trying to like be someone else. Like a lot of I went to like a private high school in a really rich suburb of Detroit. So people I went to school with, like their families were pretty wealthy.
What school was it?
University of Lincoln School.
Oh, Lydia.
Yeah, I went to
I know who was in there.
Okay, yeah. A lot of people don't know the school, so I just kind of say, I went to like a school in the suburbs or whatever. But I know a lot of them were like trying to live like this. Like a lot of the females were trying to live like the basic white girl or whatever, and like one of the issues was like a lot of the people that I actually talked to, like they acted like they were dumb and didn't know what was going on like during class and stuff like that. But in reality, they were like actually extremely intelligent, and it took years for them to like come into like owning what they were, you know. And I think that's like a really huge part of it is like you see all this stuff going on around you that you kind of get wrapped up into it, but then when you finally go into yourself and realize what's important, that's when your true self starts to like come out, you know what I mean?
What do you guys think some misconceptions are?
Misconceptions of masculinity?
Because I feel like for me, sometimes we look at it based off of race. I often think that people think that black men are a lot more masculine than maybe like a white male or an Asian male, or you know, I feel like in our minds we've been like programmed pretty much to think of like this hierarchy of like masculinity and like black men as being like the top, like aggressors, like more like you know, we don't have the emotions, we're the serious ones, we're like the athletic ones, you know, all this
the
type
deep
of thing.
Voice, the
you know,
muscles,
and then you have other ones, and I feel like with that, it's obviously a misconception, you know what I'm saying, because every race has varying different people in it, and with that being, I feel like for a lot of black men, that might create some type of like thing in their minds. They feel like they have to live up to some type of masculinity, you know, especially like in the culture. I feel like the culture kind of like pushes heavily on like, you know, you gotta be tough, you're gonna go through a lot of stuff in life, you gotta be like providing for your family. Then also feel like other races, it might be like disheartening to hear that you might not be the most masculine, you know, or I'm not for sure, you know, exactly. Like, I mean, do you have anything to put in that? Do you ever feel like masculinity is based off of like race sometimes for men? Like they view some races as being more masculine than other races?
Or like how do you even see masculinity? Because I know like one of my like biggest goals is to like travel like around the world, different countries and stuff, just because you realize how much you don't matter. It's like you're not the center. Like there's so much more out there, and it's like there's so many more definitions. So it's like we may have no idea what masculinity means to someone in a different country compared to here. And so like I'm like curious. I mean, like, do you have a different definition? Or?
Yeah, maybe I think the masculinity in China, maybe I think it's like a response for your family. Response, and in China there is one word like to say 男儿有泪不轻弹. It means the man cannot cry. Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Maybe this is in the ancient this word is maybe used for somebody, but I think now maybe need to change is if one man face difficult, you can cry, but you cannot always cry. Only cry. Do not
like shake it off.
Yeah, yeah,
eventually,
yeah.
But
Yeah, this is not a masculinity. If you do something, you can cry. You are the masculinity. Yeah, and I have one interesting thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
Do you guys watching the NBA?
Yeah.
Yeah. The NBA will choose one Chinese man in China display their show. Yes, it means we'll choose one pop star.
Okay.
Yeah, you mean
Yeah.
yeah, and in American they choose the pop star is Lillard. Yeah, Lillard. Do you know Lillard? Is one NBA player, Lillard. And another one is Giannis and
Oh yeah,
Antetokounmpo.
Giannis,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this is two in America, but another in China is just one rebel star, and he is not masculinity. So this things is let our down. So sad. He cannot. He don't play basketball even. So,
Not
but
yet.
just he have only because he has a lot of follower. So
Okay.
the NBA
Yeah.
choose him. So let us down. Yeah, this
Got it.
is.
Okay, yeah, I know. I
Wow.
see what you're talking about. Yeah, that is interesting. Like the culture definitely does perpetuate which people get to go forward. Like 100%. Like one of those. It's kind of deviating from the topic, but a lot of people in American culture are famous just because they are. You know what I mean? Where it's like they don't really do anything in particular, but
Definitely.
they just are famous because we want them to be, or
Right.
because they hold like these ideals and like maybe their physical attributes or maybe what they show on their like social media and stuff like that. It's another big part of like identity where it's like, oh, this person just seems to be like amazing in my eyes, so we're gonna idealize them and like just make them like gonna blow them extremely out of proportion.
For sure. Do we have any like stories we would like to tell about this? Like,
I mean, there's
What do
plenty
you?
of
Yeah, it's
stories.
plenty of
I
stories.
mean,
Yeah.
let's say
I
who has a good one? Who feel like they have a good story about it?
I mean, I definitely have a good story about it. Like, but I know I feel like a lot of our stories are going to be kind of
Yeah,
our stories are going to be
probably
kind of similar because we all grew up. Well, where did you grow up exactly?
different places.
Okay, so you
Yeah,
were
I was born in California, moved to Philly,
Culturally,
moved to
I
Detroit,
feel like it'll
found it
probably
again.
be the same though.
Yeah.
yeah, culturally
Essentially,
the same, just
you know.
because, like, well, I know you because of years of talking. I know you and I are very similar, but I guess one thing that kind of puts me apart is like my football background. So I do have like a lot of football stories in general. And my favorite one is one that like I almost don't like telling because it made. I'm realizing that now. I don't like telling this story because it made me feel like less of a man. Interesting. And so now I'm going to tell it because I have to. So this was back when I was playing like Little League football in the Michigan area. We have something called PAL football, which is the Police Athletic League, where like it kind of the goal is to take children off the streets and get them into more positive like activities. And like the activity that I chose for me was football because my dad forced me to end up playing football in my first year.
Yeah, my dad tried to get me to play basketball.
Yeah.
You know? I played for a year and I was like, all right, not for me.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, you know, I feel it. Like I didn't have a choice because like it was my brother was already playing on the team, so it was like my brother was on the team, my dad was the coach, so I had to be there
For
because I
sure.
wasn't doing anything else at home besides like playing video games. I was kind of a fat kid, so I had to like get out and exercise and stuff. So I'm like, okay, whatever. But once the pads came on, I got scared out of my mind because before that, I've never hit any other person. Like I've never felt that kind of like hard physical contact. And back in the day, we had something called the Bloody Alley, where we will all line up in two lines, and there's a person on their back on one end and the person on the back on the other end. When the whistle blows, your objective is to get up and get through the other man. Not past him, not over him, not under him, through him. Your objective is to knock him on his back. Go back on his back. And I remember, like, I was going through the alley for the first time, and my dad had purposely put me up against one of the hardest hitters on our team, and I broke down crying. Like, literally, I'm just like, oh no. I'm like, Dad, I'm not hitting him. He gonna kill me. Get me out of here. Like, in front of all the coaches, like in front of all the other coaches, in front of all my other teammates, just broke down crying. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm not doing this. This is not what I'm about to do. But my dad pulled me aside, and like that's kind of one of the quote unquote man lessons, which I think was somewhat positive. Even if you're afraid of some things, you just kind of got to do it and get over it, just so you can know that you did it, like facing your fears type thing. And I guess that taught me how to quote unquote be more of a man, because like right after that, I had to hit him. He wasn't letting me out of it. So like he definitely knocked me out. There was like no question about it. I was on my back within like 5 seconds of being in that alley. He ran me over, but it didn't hurt.
Yeah.
And right after that, I got back up, got back in the alley, and I knocked the next kid out, because that's just after getting over that first hit, it was like, all right, now that I know what I'm getting ready to get myself into, I can dole it out just as well as I can take it. And so that kind of actually ended up sparking my love for football because of that moment exactly. So I guess I gotta thank my dad and that guy that like I had to hit up against. I completely forgot what his name is, but like, but yeah, that was kind of like me being less of a man, even though I was like what. I want to say I was about 11 or 12, so like not even like, didn't even have facial hair yet. So,
Sure.
But yeah, that was definitely kind of a masculinity lesson, I guess.
Like I got stories, but I mean, of course, you know, when I was younger, like trying to make sure I kept my voice deeper and stuff. We were like trying to hit the gym all the time and stuff like that.
Stuff
like,
that I feel like we all like every guy I feel like goes through some of those different things, like, especially through like those awkward years of life, you know, when the voice starts to crack and you know,
start growing that facial hair,
trying to like, drop it, you know. Some people still, you know, trying, you know. It's okay, you know. So I'm just gonna let it go right now.
Connect. That's all.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's gonna connect at some point, but I'm just gonna rock with it for right now.
Do what you gotta do.
But yeah, it's like little things like that. You know, for certain people, it really bothers them. But I feel like it's one of those things in life. It's like a goal of mine to just be comfortable, like with myself.
Seriously,
you know what I'm saying?
You
like
have to be.
And it's honestly, it takes time, and you know, you get there. But just to kind of, I guess, wrap this conversation up a little bit, like, what final thoughts do you guys have about this topic? Do you have anything you just want to kind of, you know, throw out there as like a ending statement that you kind of gathered from the conversation, or you want like the viewers to know or hear that might be, you know, impactful in any type of way?
I feel like the biggest takeaway from this conversation is you have to be comfortable with yourself. Like that's kind of the biggest part of any of this. Like you, in order to not get consumed by another identity, whether that be straight, gay, black, white, feminine, masculine, whatever, you have to be comfortable enough with yourself first. So like, if you gotta like take a second and just like meditate or dive deep into your own mind to figure out what you gotta do, just do that. Like self-care is like, what am I trying to say here? Self-care is very important. A lot more important than people.
It's a necessity. I feel like it's people don't realize it's a necessity. Like if you don't, you're just like wrecking yourself. It's like your body is a vehicle. You have to take care of it. Is how I look at it. You know.
Right.
And that honestly is the main thing that was in my mind as well. And to add on to that is to try to surround yourself with people who actually want to help you like progress and like who actually you can like bond with and have those meaningful conversations with, because for sure it's one thing you have to like dive deep into yourself and just be like authentic to you. You know what I'm saying? Do what you love, do what you enjoy. Like one thing you have to like get away from like where you're comfortable, because like your household where you grow up, that's not who you are. That's who your parents are. You know what I'm saying? Parts of that will be with you, but like once you leave, you'll realize that's not who you are. That's just how you grew up. So like you said, that self-care is one thing. Also just getting out, getting a chance to know yourself and surrounding yourself with people that will better yourself and better your like awareness of things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, man, like it's such a compound effect that comes from either if you have it or if you don't, because it'll go into so many different things. But like, just like your self-talk, like literally, it's something about spoken words. Like if you say it out loud to yourself in the mirror, like some people might think it's weird, but like if you gotta do that, it makes a total difference.
No, yeah,
What works for
100%.
you.
Yeah, like if you're happy and you're happy all the time because you love who you are, like it makes life so much more enjoyable.
It really does.
You can sense someone who like is authentic. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
You see those people who have those complexes about themselves, and it's honestly easy to pick up on. Like when you first meet a person, if they're trying to be something, if they're trying, to come off a certain way, but no one I feel like is really looking at a man for masculinity, especially if you're like younger and you're listening to this, because I know right now being 22 is totally different from being 16,
Man.
17, 18.
Very
You
true.
know what I'm saying? Like high school, like going into college, all that was like huge on my mind. Like how I looked, how I spoke, like everything. I was always like judging myself. Like even I remember I would be like super afraid to like present because the only thing I would think about was like people judging me or like just social interactions. Like I feel like even when I first met you, I wasn't as social as I am now.
You were literally in your bed most of the time I was in your room and I was hanging out with your roommate.
Pretty much just because at that point I was like, I was just going through a lot more with like finding myself. You know what I'm saying? And masculinity, yes, plays a part into it, but once you become who you are meant to be, at that point, there's really nothing that could like hold you back.
Man,
Exactly.
it's crazy.
And honestly, I like even Josh. He helped me get to that point. You know what I'm saying? We had many conversations about things. And,
Oh yeah.
just life in general. And one thing I found out that I needed to know is not to get like I don't need anyone to confirm anything about me. That's the biggest thing. Just know to confirm it with yourself.
Oh,
Wow.
snap.
That's okay.
That's
Go
right.
deep then.
That's right.
Go deep then.
Pass around.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah, I feel like. Yeah. I mean, I could go on and on about
it's
this, but
so
like,
you can.
yeah,
It's a really
so
complex
heavy,
topic.
yo.
Definitely.
Like, man, this is how it leads back to identity and everything. But
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, I'll just say one more thing. I just feel like at the end of the day, with all of that, masculinity, I think it's so much is rooted in just being respectful. I think that's such a huge pillar because there are a lot of men and women both, but like focusing on men, like there are a lot of men who don't understand the importance of respect, and it's not a fact of, for example, like being in submission to respect and stuff like that. Like it's not a thing of, oh, I'm a dude, nobody can tell me what to do. Like that's not. You have to know when to listen. You have to know when to speak. You have to, treat women, treat everyone, correctly, not cut people off the name. Like I just feel like that's so important, just for your brand as a human being, just to be a respectful person.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's just kind of how I feel. But
It's literally just something you heard from like since you were younger. Treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Honestly. It's that easy.
It
yeah,
really is.
yeah,
Like in your mind, you always we're meant to overthink
man,
things.
Yeah.
the easiest things are the most easily
Right.
forgotten and overlooked.
For sure.
Very true statement.
But yeah,
I think that wraps it up, man. Everybody.
that was a good little power.
It was
Can't
like
lie.
it feels good to talk about stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
Man,
Things
it
that you
does.
don't always have a conversation about.
Yeah.
I feel like stuff like that, the conversations you need to have.
Exactly.
Man, like not the same conversations. I want to talk about something differently deep.
Yeah.
Each time, let's grow our mind.
Yeah,
exactly.
for real.
100%.
Yeah.
You get a better understanding of the people you're with. You know what I'm saying? You
Exactly.
grow yourself.
Mhm.
There's different,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, perspectives,
Real.
different things.
That's real, man.
Well, I definitely appreciate y'all having me on. Like,
Yes,
y'all-
Josh,
for
thank
sure.
you.
if you need me for any other episode, like, definitely let me know because I really enjoyed this.
That was some good input, man. I
No,
can't.
for sure.
Yeah.
It reminded me back in the day when we all used to get together.
Oh,
Like all
yeah.
the guys. When we were all like it was him, my friend Ray, Zach, sometimes Andy, whoever. We would just all get together and talk about like life.
Like
Politics.
life, politics,
Never
religion,
ending
like
just because
It
it's.
was one
Right.
of those just sit there and talk. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's dope. It's definitely a good bonding
Yeah.
thing for men to do. To just
Definitely
be able to open up and speak.
Open up, yeah. Definitely.
living your life closed off is definitely a painful thing because I've done it before
Yeah,
and it's
same.
not fun.
For sure. All right. Thank you everybody for like watching. Thank you, Josh,
Watching?
for coming. All right. for listening. You know what I'm saying?
They were listening, but they was watching it.
They
in
was-
their mind.
you know what I'm saying? You
They
know,
had a vision.
Right.
Y'all watch
Hey,
my
comment
YouTube.
below if you think. Comment below if you think you know what I look like.
Hit that subscribe button. I'm saying. No, that's my YouTube rating. No, all right, for sure. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Josh, for being here, and I hope you
Yes.
guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, catch us later for our next episode. This was the Minority Input.
All right, peace.